outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. First and foremost, I hope everybody's having a good Christmas day. I myself had some lobster tail, steak, and a whole slew of other goodies today for a Christmas Day meal. Would like to bring this to your attention, and this is something that I hadn't thought about until today. But in the wake of the whole Me Too, pound Me Too, many of us are probably familiar with several stories, a handful of stories here and there of women making up kidnapping stories where usually the story involves some white woman being kidnapped by a group of minorities, being raped. When come to find out, when the story comes out, the woman was not kidnapped at all. It was all a ruse. It was all a attention-getting ploy by the woman to either make the husband or boyfriend feel bad or make the husband or boyfriend look bad and maybe put him in the position of being questioned by the police as to her disappearance. There was one such case 2 or 3 years ago. I want to say it was in Texas someplace. But that got me thinking. When this happens, typically the end result is that the woman ends up charged with making a false report and sometimes even spends a few days in jail, depending on. And I really had to think about it because I really don't see much of a difference in that and the rash of women lying about sexual harassment, not even rape, but just sexual harassment, any kind of touching that could be deemed as sexual harassment. And it's not even really even called sexual harassment now. The language has been massaged and nuanced to the point to where they're just referring to it now as sexual misconduct, which could mean anything. It could even maybe even mean giving a woman a look that she doesn't approve of. And so, but these women are never lionized in the media, or I'm sorry, these women are never, lambasted in the media. They're never brought to task when it comes out that they were lying about their accusations. No charges whatsoever, even though that they have ruined somebody's life. Now, oftentimes, the women in the false kidnapping with allegations of that sort, there aren't any real people involved. These are all people that they've just made up, but there's no names or anything attached to these people. No one's actually been accused. These are fictitious people. But they're charged with a crime because a police report is involved. But these women who are lying about, who are trying to deceive people into thinking that they were not willing participants in trying to advance their career and lying about being sexually harassed or lying about the sexual misconduct, there's no police report involved. Why? Because when a police report is involved and it has come to light that the accusations are downright false, made up, and fictitious, they can be charged with a crime. Whereas, so they don't make these reports, but they do ruin real people's lives with no consequences. And to me, that just, I don't know, it seems odd. It seems to me like, and I can't remember, is it libel or slander when it's written or the accusations made verbally? In any event, there's not even any consequences in a court of law civilly most of the time. Now, the other day I was driving around doing some last-minute Christmas, not even really Christmas shopping, but last-minute supply run because, as you know, everything on Christmas Day is closed. There's nowhere open, maybe a convenience store. And I saw a woman with a bumper sticker on the back that said Pipeline Wife. And it reminded me of, the stickers that you'd see in the military, on the military bases from the Dependopotamuses, the Marine wife, Army wife, police wife, fireman's wife. Even a man's own accomplishments are not his own. His accomplishments are not his own without some woman somewhere getting credit, even though she doesn't put on the combat boots every day. She doesn't put on the duty belt. She doesn't run into the blazing inferno of a building. She doesn't go out there and break her back for 2 weeks, 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off out in the oil field. But somehow, by virtue of the fact of happening to be married to somebody that does, she gets some sort of credit. She gets some sort of praise. She's lauded for just, spreading her legs for an individual that does do this. Again, it goes back to the bar for women is set so low. Men have to be and do and earn so much to be respected and to be thought of as having any value. But all a woman need do is marry somebody that has a certain occupation, and it's as if she does that occupation herself. Now, I wanted to bring up something else that I had noticed a couple months back, and I don't know how many people do the Reddit thing. I don't really do the Reddit thing. I get on the MGTOW Reddit and read the articles and look at some of the funny posts and stuff, but I don't have a Reddit presence, as it were. If you ever go onto the ex-Mormon Reddit, I'd say about 90% of the content is about how oppressed women are in the LDS church. It's a very SJW Reddit. And it's funny because you've got two sides of the same coin right there. You have the TradCon LDS view, and then you have the overcompensation in the form of the social justice view of the ex-Mormons. And it is true, in the LDS church, women cannot hold the priesthood. But it's also very true that women frequently divorce their husbands for any reason, and it's allowed in the LDS church to marry a more successful Mormon, to marry. Oftentimes the bishops and things are chosen based off of their what they do in their civilian life. And there is also a lot of hypergamy, as I've discussed on here in the past, as regards to the LDS church, that many LDS women will not marry a guy unless he's a returned missionary, comes from a certain family, has a certain pioneer lineage, can't be a convert. His ties to the church, he has to be born in covenant, and he cannot be, he has to have a lineage that goes back so far within the church of his relatives, and also in some ways has to be a part of the Morador, has to be born in Utah and be a Utah member of the church. So there's a lot of hypergamy there. And I bring that up because the Mormon church is a good example of how being a traditional conservative is the same coin as feminism. Because both feminism and traditional conservatives want men to sacrifice themselves for the betterment of women. They want men to work themselves to the bone for the betterment of women. The only difference between tradcons and feminists is that tradcons try to fool men into thinking that there is something noble in doing this. They try to fool men into thinking that it's noble to sacrifice yourself, and a real man sacrifices himself. They try to make it as some sort of consolation prize that is really no prize at all. And that brings me to my last point of this video, and this is kind of a short video. That of intellectually induced asexuality. Stardust has talked about it on his podcast before, so this is nothing new, and I think I've mentioned it here. And I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if it's a result of physiology from there, of getting older. But it's the more that I find out about women, the more that I understand women, the less attracted to them that I am. I don't know if that makes sense. I find at this point TFM Celestina to be almost in some ways more attractive than even an organic woman, because they don't bring anything to the table. They don't bring anything to the table minus their sexual organ, which oftentimes is nothing to rave about. And to be quite honest with you, I'm so. If you've ever read the statistics for HPV and how many people have HPV, it's a pretty good chance that if you get with any woman and have any kind of sexual contact with her, you may contract some sort of STD, but certainly you have a high chance of contracting HPV, which in some cases can lead to certain types of cancer. So, and it's just the more that I understand that women really don't care about you as a person, and that they're so solipsistic. They don't see, they see the world in terms of how it affects them and how they can be involved in it. I was listening to one of Hugh Mann's talks the other day on his channel about where he was talking about basically how you really can't have an interesting conversation with a woman in the same way that you can with a guy, because a guy can look at a subject. For instance, World War II. This is something that's always interested me. That's something I've been reading a lot more books about lately. And World War II has nothing to do with me. I wasn't born at that time. The only person that I really knew that was even involved in it was my grandfather, and he didn't talk about it. Certainly not to, a 7, 8-year-old kid at the time, because he died when I was about 8 years old. So he wasn't talking to me about what he did in World War II when I was that age. But yet I find it interesting, and I read about it, and I'm fascinated about it, even though it has nothing to do with me. Whereas with a woman, her only interest is how can it benefit her? How can it put her in the limelight? How can it garner her attention? How can it garner her resources? How can it do something for her? And this explains absolutely everything. They don't bring anything to the table but a load of baggage and problems. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today on the Days of Thunder. I hope that everybody's enjoying the holiday in the way that they see fit. I want to give a couple shout outs. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Human's channel. Check it out. Great channel, great content. Give it a listen, as well as TFM's channel. Been listening to his stuff a lot lately, and it's a very good channel, not just for information, but also just to have a few laughs along the way. The guys on there are very funny. Check out Mountain MGTOW's channel. I like his visuals. I wish that I lived in the place that it is that he lives. And certainly he has a very calm, peaceful, and rational demeanor in his videos. Simon's Diamond MGTOW, I think he has come out with the second video. And Simon, I haven't had a chance to check your second video out yet, but I'm looking forward to more content from you in the near future. Keep in mind that the new year is upon us. Will be in a few days. And I want you guys to really give thought to what you did this year. The dreams, the goals, the aspirations, the things that you wanted to accomplish this year. Were you able to do so? What things distracted you? What things did you find out in your life that maybe you need to extricate from your life in order to become the best version of yourself for yourself that you can be? And I'll certainly be doing the same thing as the clock and the days tick down to the new year, because I would like to see a lot of changes in my own life, and I would also like to see success in the changes that you guys are wanting to see in your lives as well. We walk together, and remember, you're free to do as you're told.